Welcome to another episode of the Crypto Spendthrift Podcast. This is going to be Thanksgiving edition for all the U.S. listeners. That also means this is being recorded super early because I have to go 6 hours west to go home for Thanksgiving. So, not a whole lot of news, and won't be anything that happens later on Wednesday. So if Tether blows up today, I won't be able to report it until Monday. But let's go into the news. First up, flood on all sides. CMEs, Bitcoin plan. There's a author that was a former margin trader, and basically he wanted to clear up all the FUD that was on it and say, this is a margin trader's dream that this happening with Bitcoin. You know, fast transactions, hard to defraud. And whenever something bad like terrorism hits, Bitcoin's going to go up like gold. And all in all, he just goes, this is a real professional organization, and their risk management is already factoring in how to prevent Bitcoin volatility from affecting the water economy with this futures market thing. So, interesting perspective from him. Article's going to be in the Steemit post if you want to read the whole thing yourself. But that was the gist of it. There's a survey with institutional investors that show they're split on the prices, though, and they're wary of ICOs like most people should be. So most of these institutional traders think that Bitcoin is still a bubble and will crash. And I agree that we'll probably see some correction soon because this Tether issue is really concerning. But it was going to return to the value in the long term, honestly. So it gives individuals time to buy Bitcoin if you're still on the fence. But yeah, they're splitting the price, think it's a bubble. A lot of them think ICOs are scams, which most end up being. Speaking of ICO scams, Confido vanishes with over $350,000. So Confido was a pretty good exit scam, honestly. Like, they raised a lot of money, sold off their portion of their coins as the price kept rising to, I think, $1.14 or something, or $1.04. And then they're using fake identities, supposedly. The only person you have a connection in this community, connection in the Confido staff, you'd say, is a volunteer community manager that said he's filed a police report against them. So, who knows if you'll be able to find the Confido team their real identities, or if they were using their real identities, which I feel like they probably weren't, because people have been having a hard time tracking down these people, and you'd expect people who've lost thousands. Like I was in the Telegram and noticed how people were saying they're losing tens of thousands. Like one guy said 10,000, the other was like 20,000. People were losing a lot of money from this exit scam. So, will it have a good end? Probably not. With cryptos, sometimes it's hard to track down people who do these sorts of things, but hopefully it'll end up well, even if the chance of that is slim. On a side note to here, this kind of inspired me to look into a few ICOs to see what kind of online presence their team had. And so far I did around, I think, 16 to 18. And 5 of them either went about time when I investigated them. They were either confirmed a scam. Well, one out of the 5 was confirmed a scam, even if it rates around the same much as Confido did. Another one refunded money, which I didn't really count that as a 5. So, but the 4 related ones left, the team had a iffy online presence. Like, I'm kind of defining an iffy online presence. Like, Nowadays, you should be able to find their name associated not only with their project, but with something else. And with that, you should at least find one thing related to their name, since usually what happens with Google is once someone gets a certain person with the name gets popular, you usually see that specific person's like related accounts more than any other person. So unless they have a really common name, this is usually easy to do. In addition, you should be able to find any kind of public records of like company establishment or any of that stuff, which I guess if they're using fake identities, that's kind of moot sometimes. But I'd say you'd want to see multiple pictures or see them attend a conference. That's good. Or videos of them. All in all, I'd just say heavily investigate teams before you go with ICOs, because it could easily turn out like this. Mainly because you at least want to know one person on the team so you can hold somebody accountable, specifically leadership, because a volunteer community manager like the Confido one, you're not going to get really. It's not on his part to be blamed unless he was kind of accomplished in this exit scam. But on to the rest of the news. So THEs or ICBMs. ICO creators are basically making up new terms to skid around being called an ICO. However, the SEC might not be having this because it's basically leveled any kind of crypto company that's raising funds this way as a security. So with all this regulatory difficulty in the U.S., it'll probably end up making most companies go to Japan, Singapore, Switzerland, or somewhere else in Europe, rather than even attempt to be based in the United States. Next up, can ATMs encourage cryptocurrency adoption? This was basically talking about how ATMs can enable mass adoption, but there's too many barriers like transaction costs and the public only really knowing about Bitcoin and not altcoins that have low enough transactions to enable ATMs to flourish from people's loose change. Which is funny because Russian regulators are warning issues against the installation of Bitcoin ATMs. Russia's really anti-crypto in general. They've kind of created some framework in dealing with crypto, but still they're kind of at all odds with it, saying it's mainly for facilitating laundering and or terrorism. So Russia might become another country in line with China and kind of America of kind of in line with these two countries of people in the countries wanting to fully embrace crypto, but the law really blocking any kind of innovation in a way. Next up is the CBOE has released details on their futures contracts. They're going to be weekly and quarterly contracts that will be available and paid out in cash. So the most interesting part of this article was their volatility index was compared to the stock market index and Bitcoin's price fluctuation. And this organization basically said all these basic volatility indexes were relatively similar, which kind of gives a good spell for Bitcoin because people really complain that it's volatile. But lately, as the price increases and more people get involved, it's been seeing way less swings, like radical swings, than it did in the earlier days or even earlier this year. Next up, people always turn to Bitcoin in times of crisis, And this has been happening in Zimbabwe because more people have cell phones than bank accounts. And all you really need to do is have some kind of either credit, debit card, or prepaid one, and most of the times you can just transfer money through your phone. This also kind of empowers people to hold their own money, and the fact that it can be traded to US dollars and held and then converted, can be converted to US dollars and then converted to their local currency, also kind of gives like an avenue for that, just in case their currency has like low liquidity when buying Bitcoin straight or selling Bitcoin straight into it. So a lot of opportunity when things go awry for countries. And next up is Bitcoin.com. So I'm sure some of you have heard that Bitcoin.com, I think it's Roger Ver that owns it, real proponent of Bitcoin Cash. So he's changed the entire thing of Bitcoin.com to showing instructions for Bitcoin Cash. So there's tons of controversy about this. Honestly, you should, if you want to add Bitcoin Cash, have both as options and make it very clear that there's similar but different. But it's kind of an act of a tribalism here to embrace what he defines as the true Bitcoin. Kind of sad to see, but not surprising. Next up is a topic that I've been interested in for the last week or two. It's Tether, yet again. So I'm sure you also heard that they lost $30 million to hackers and they hard forked the coin. They hard forked the coin to quarantine this $30 million. And this has just been adding more fuel to the fire to anti-Tether sentiment, because people have already been very skeptical about Tether because how much they're printing in quotation, I guess, the more Tethers, and people are suspecting that this is actually pumping up Bitcoin's price because of all these printed Tethers and the staff and association that Tether has with a few exchanges and people in the kind of venture capitalist world of crypto. So there's been a little conspiracy going around about that too. Very interesting. I'm actually looking into it a bit myself to see all these connections, but I'll let you guys know about that. Then reports are about this SAFT contract outline, legal outline. Basically, this is a legal outline that's been established to try to help U.S. companies navigate this little SEC issue they're facing. However, this outline is actually not helping companies avoid the security classification, and what this outline is actually kind of enabling is for crypto to be more gated, and kind of similar to how venture capital is now, and kind of gate out the lower end of users who don't have as much money to kind of shift this security designation away. This isn't really binding or anything. It's just a general framework for now. But there's also a lot of discourse in this. A lot of more civil discourse compared to this Tether situation. But expect more people to be kind of talking about ICOs and avoiding that being labeled as security, or just where to go to establish their own company for crypto, because as I said earlier, the US isn't making it easy for companies like this. And then finally, some good news about regulation is Bitcoin exchange Globitex is granted a European electronic money license, which will basically enable them to handle more institutional players since they don't have to go directly to or from banks. They're using the European one payment system, which is SAFT, and they're looking to expand it to commodity and derivative trading for Bitcoin. So this is a pretty big thing for Europe. Definitely will probably enable the European side to see an influx of money, because most money, I think, is coming from Asia right now, since they're really the laxest on regulation. Singapore is really going out its way to learn about crypto. Japan kind of laid out the compliances early and allowing it to flourish. Sure, China's banned a lot of things, but China was like a small blimp, because they're all either ran off to Hong Kong or Singapore, or even Japan in some cases. Korea is kind of the only one that's iffy. But yeah, I think this will probably enable even more European money to come in. I don't think it's going to be a flood like Asia was, but I think it's going to be a continuous stream as more of these exchanges for the bigger players become more and more compliant with legal framework. And that'll be it. Since it was Thanksgiving, yeah, I had less articles, less to talk about, since I'm doing it early. But here's a little extra for you. I've been kind of working around with an investor in writing, testing out kind of how community sentiment can help a coin rise and all that. So that's been an interesting thing. From when I started working on it, writing's been rising. So QSP's done a lot more in the time, but I think writing has pretty good potential. So I'm sticking with helping this guy and even throwing what little money I have into writing just to see what happens, because this scaling solutions are like the hot topic right now. And if writing can scale Ethereum, basically, I think it's 100 times what it is right now, that'll be like insane. But kind of seeing where it goes. Honestly, I don't know how much of an impact our efforts has been in kind of growing Write-in's community, but it's been an interesting past 2 weeks. And that'll be all. So see you guys on the Monday episode. Probably will have more information, more news, because I won't have to go on a 6-hour journey. So until next time, share the episode on social media, whatever. Vote the Steam It post. Do all that crazy stuff. I'll see you next time.